When I was 15, my world was already a strange blend of life and death. Growing up in a funeral home meant that grief was a constant visitor and silence had a voice of its own, but nothing, not the whispers of mourning families, not the cold stillness of the embalming room, and certainly not the endless shuffle of flower arrangements, prepared me for the day a man called to arrange the funeral for his wife and infant daughter. The story gripped our small town, splashing across every newspaper. A mother cradling her baby in death, lives extinguished in a moment of inexplicable cruelty. The man's voice on the phone trembled, breaking under the weight of his loss, and even then, the horror was palpable. My parents took the call, and I was drawn into the folds of the tragedy, a quiet, unobtrusive presence that wouldn't raise suspicion. The funeral home was no stranger to sorrow, but that day it draped itself over every corner, suffocating and oppressive. The viewing room was somber, its centerpiece the casket where a mother held her child in eternal stillness. The air was thick with the mingling scents of lilies and carnations, and I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes, all mourning, all searching for something to make sense of the senseless. The police had set up surveillance, suspecting that the killer might attend. It wasn't unheard of. Sometimes the murderer wanted to revel in the grief they'd caused. The idea chilled me. But what disturbed me more was the task I was given, to collect the flower cards and bring them to the husband to identify names. He was always nearby, hovering on the edge of the room like a shadow. His face was a mask of devastation, red eyes, hollow cheeks, trembling hands that fumbled to hold on to reality. Every time I brought him a card, he would stare at it, his lips moving silently before shaking his head. "I'm sorry," he'd whisper, his voice cracking like old wood. "I don't know them." We spoke often during those days, brief exchanges that were always tinged with sorrow. I thought I understood him. How could I not, standing amidst his nightmare? But the truth was something I couldn't even begin to comprehend. The police were working tirelessly, but the case seemed like a labyrinth with no exit. Then, a break came, in the form of an unlikely witness, a 3-year-old girl who had been playing outside the victim's home on the day of the murders. She had seen someone leaving, a man she recognized. Her small, innocent voice was the spark that illuminated the darkness. She pointed to a photograph of the husband's best friend. The revelation shattered the fragile narrative of grief and loss. It wasn't just the best friend. The husband was involved, too. The police unraveled a sinister pact between the two men, an agreement to kill each other's families and start new lives with their secretaries. When the little girl identified the friend, everything fell apart. Guilt and desperation cracked their resolve, and they confessed to their monstrous plan. They were both arrested, their faces plastered, across the same newspapers that had mourned their victims. I remember standing in the viewing room on the day of the funeral, watching the husband kneel by the casket. His sobs were gut-wrenching, his hands clutching the edge as if trying to hold on to the fragments of his shattered world. And all the while, I stood just feet away, clueless to the truth. I spoke to a murderer. I stood beside him, watched his tears, and believed his pain. I thought I understood grief, but I was a child who couldn't see the darkness lurking beneath the surface. To this day, I can still hear the little girl's voice as she pointed to the photograph, her tiny finger sealing the fates of 2 men. And every so often I think about that casket, the mother and child frozen in time, and the lies that draped the room like the heavy scent of lilies. I haven't looked at life the same way since.